transition is with us, and it's here to stay. Global economics, technological changes at the speed of light, and social values that are changing faster than any time in the past. To help guide you along your journey in this fast-changing life, the show with a purpose: to empower, to enlighten, to educate, and to entertain. The show that offers you a friend, a guide in the most transitional time in the history of the human race. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Steve Beaman.
Hello, my friends, and welcome to this edition of the Steve Beaman Show. It's a great pleasure to be with you as we begin another week together, and it's something that we love to do is be part of that beautiful beginning. Today's show is going to be a little bit special. We've changed up some things a little bit, but as always, we've got a discussion of transition. And in tonight's show, we're going to talk about Facebook and free speech, which gets into some core values of ours. We're going to look at social media and how it's affecting your children and grandchildren. And we're also going to talk about relationship dynamics through social media. We've got some really interesting content there. And in our contest of the week area, Carol and I have put together a great contest we think you're going to love. And then, of course, we have Carol's Words of Wisdom, and we're anxious to hear the letter C. Coming down from the bottom of the hour, we're going to have our letters from listeners, and we got some really great feedback. And then finally, in our Master Your Money segment, we are talking about how to select an advisor. So this is a show you won't want to miss any of it. Carol, how do we begin talking to people about such transitions?
Well, Steve, you were talking about this Facebook and free speech. And, you know, we have an article on stevebeaman.com, and it talks about Facebook and free speech. What right does a private company have to censor speech?
Yeah, this is a big issue, and it's much bigger, I think, than people really grasp at the outset. Let's accept right off that social media has enormous impact in our society. It's in the last 5 years sprung out of nowhere. And so the question comes up, does a private company like Facebook have the inherent right to limit the speech of one segment of the spectrum and promote other segments?
Well, we'll go into a little bit of depth and a little bit of history, because what has been said lately, Facebook ex-employees have said that they deliberately quelched conservative
this
speech.
was a big issue. And to your point, an employee brought it up as a whistleblower a while back. But recently there was an investigative journalist who wrote about it and found that even Mark Zuckerberg, the chairman of Facebook, had made comments that they were squelching speech about Israel that was in support of the state of Israel, but promoting speech in support of Palestine. And they admitted it. Now, interestingly, Mark Zuckerberg came out just this week, yesterday, I think it was, and actually said, I don't do that. We don't censor speech. But his own comments fly in the face of that. We know, like the New York Times editorializes, that's kind of what this is.
Well, now, there was a lawsuit, right, that resulted in this Facebook when Facebook forced back down something permitting...
Originally, there was a lawsuit that said you can't do this because they weren't telling people they were doing it.
Well, it's not as simple as simply a First Amendment right, is it?
No, and this is the reason we're bringing this up on the show. This show is about what we call constantly real help for real people. Mm-hmm. And part of real help for real people is to enlighten people about what's going on in the world around them. Social media has literally exploded out of nowhere.
Well, and social media impacts all of our lives, not only our children and our grandchildren and our nephew. It impacts our lives, too.
It sets political agendas. You wouldn't have the Arab Spring without social media. And people, you and I've talked, Carol, most people get the bulk of their news now off of Facebook. So what happens if Facebook is censoring the type of news you can see?
So as far as free speech, what deems something offensive? I mean, what's offensive? We've become this safe space society where, you know, you could say something about the color green and it could be offensive to some people.
And that is part of the problem here. One of the issues you get into is if Facebook says we don't allow speech that we deem to be offensive. Well, who says? You know, go back long enough, it was offensive to criticize the king. Well, do we want to go there again where you can't criticize a politician? And so the censorship issues are deep within our First Amendment rights. But does Facebook have the right as a private company to do it?
I believe as a private company, they probably do have the right to do it, although they also have a responsibility, almost like a fiduciary responsibility,
Yeah,
but we'll talk more about
that's
that
right.
big word later. But don't they have a stewardship? They have a stewardship of serving their customer base to give everybody all perspectives, don't
I
they?
think they do, and I think what Facebook would find, as they're finding. I mean, there was a company called MySpace not too long ago that almost went out of business. I mean, it was a Facebook precursor. The point being, if Facebook censors a certain type of speech,
Mhm.
the marketplace will respond to that and put them out of business in the long run. So, to your point, I think it is in their interest to be a steward over that and to allow all types of offensive, inoffensive, just discussion go on.
Okay. Here's what I think. If someone is threatening someone, or bodily harm, or physical harm, and then there's that mental harm that we're going to talk more about in the next segment
We
with our
are.
kids. But you know what? How do you create a good society with solutions unless you take the best of all ideas, discuss them responsibly, and that's how good things really happen. I may not agree with you on everything, but I want to hear what you have to say on something I don't agree with you on, because as a person, I'm going to keep my mind and heart open, and I might glean some wonderful new ideas.
Most ideas that we take as beneficial at one point were considered harmful. I mean,
Example.
the world is flat, or the world is.
Okay.
I mean, you go back to Galileo's time when they thought the sun revolved around the earth. As we learn, sometimes what is thought of as offensive thought or offensive speech becomes mainstream. But we want to be careful. And again, we're going to go into this bullying thing later because that's such a national phenomenon.
Right.
But we want to be careful in the speech area. And the New York Times does this all the time. They censor what they promote. That's what news. But this idea you bring up of don't they have a fiduciary obligation? It goes to what has been known as the fourth estate. Does news not have a higher responsibility to all of us to promote the truth and to promote an unbiased view? I think they do.
Well, I wish I could remember, but there was something that was said about ever seeking of the truth. And I think truth is what people are looking for. But also, there's the responsibility when you are bringing people information. That is power. And you have written in your article, which you could go to stevebeaman.com and see Facebook and free speech, a great deal of power. And with great power comes great
Yeah, I
responsibility.
stole that from Spider-Man. But it's a great statement, and it's true. With great power comes great responsibility. And I think we
Absolutely.
don't want to underestimate the enormous power of Facebook and Twitter and Pinterest and all of these social media giants that set the conversation. And again, it goes to why we're talking about it, because this society we're living in that is moving in so fast a light speed into a new world, this social media thing is a big part of that. It's a way we're now getting news. It's a way we sustain friendships. It's a way we raise kids. It's all through our lives.
Well, I'll tell you funny. I have a 19-year-old son, and Mom, I don't even use Facebook anymore. That's for old people. So
Right.
what is the demographic? It's probably like 50, 40, 50 and above now, Facebook, and the kids are using, what are some of these other ones?
Twitter's probably their biggest.
Face chat.
Instagram, Snapchat,
Snapchat.
all these. And again, but it's important for us, and especially if we're in a parent generation, or if you're in your 30s and you're starting out raising a family, realize the impact of this on your kids' culture. It's enormous. And when again, in the next segment, we're going to talk about kids and bullying, because
Right.
cyberbullying has replaced what all of us who are 40 and up knew what bullying was.
Well, I do look at this social media as a dual-edged sword, because there's a lot of good that comes out of it. People can have babies across the country and do this FaceTime where you
Yep.
could see the baby live time, but then there's the other darker side of it.
And it's something we all, I think, need to be aware of as parents, as grandparents, as prospective parents, or even as friends who we've all had this where you get into an instant messaging or a text chat and it becomes a fight and you're texting an
Oh.
argument. We need to grow beyond that and get back to actually having a conversation.
Well, I think yeah, that is a good thing. Having a conversation. I wonder if these younger people know how to have conversations without using their fingers.
There's a lot of evidence that we're losing the ability to have civil dialogue. Professors talk about it on incoming freshmen, that they literally think in sound bites. And That's not a way to build the kind of the culture that we want to build, I
Well,
don't
that
think.
is a good way to manipulate people, though, to make people soundbite stupid, where you hear just a quick soundbite and that becomes truth, huh?
That's an absolute fact. So, folks, as we come back, we're going to go through the cyberbullying thing and how this stuff really does affect relationships that you're involved in. And at the bottom of the hour, we do have Carol's Words of Wisdom with the letter C today. We're excited about that. And a challenge coming up for you, by the way, in the next segment, which we think you're really going to like. This is the Steve Beaman Show. And as always, we are so glad to have you with us.
And now, back to the Steve Beaman Show with co-host Carol Parisi, taking you to where the rubber meets the road.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Steve Beaman Show with my co-host Carol Parisi and myself. And today we're talking about transition and transitional things, specifically social media. And by the way, I wanted to mention to you, we've talked to a lot of folks about this segment of the show, and we're going to be retitling, I think, aren't we, Carol, to Master Your Mind?
I love Master Your Mind.
Yeah.
Although I did like the screeching tires
I
where the
did.
rubber meets the road. That kind of gives you that adrenaline rush, too, you know?
We'll find something in the mind. But it's the concept in this segment that we bring you news articles that relate to something transformational in society. And today, as I indicated in the first segment, we're talking about cyberbullying. And this is a huge thing. I hear about it, I read about it, and we see kids taking their own lives because they're being bullied in cyberspace.
Well, how many times people, these kids, or even ourselves, okay, you post something on Facebook and nobody likes it. How does that make you feel? You know? And, all of a sudden there's this, gratification of having 30 likes, 50 likes, 100 likes on a Facebook post. How is that affecting our kids? And how is it changing relationships with people?
You know, Carol, I've often thought about it as what I kind of think of as a child star syndrome. You take someone like a Michael Jackson, who at 10, 11 years old pops onto the national scene, and they're now living in the bubble of popular opinion. How difficult that is for them, and you can see how it affects kids. Look at our children today, to your point. They put up a picture on Pinterest or on Instagram, and if it doesn't get so many likes in such a period of time, it's a personal statement of their value.
But that doesn't really, how do we teach our kids better that your value is not in what you post on your social media? It's not your popularity. This takes popularity contests to a whole new level.
Well, it does. And I think it was Elvis Presley one time who said it was very difficult for him as a man to live up to the image of Elvis Presley. What we're doing is setting our kids up to live on an image they create in social media.
Oh, so to feed the persona versus feed the real intrinsic person.
Right. And there was this article that I thought was important here, comes out of Pediatrics publications, and it's all about when we all grew up, and if you're above 40, you probably remember this. When we had a bully in the neighborhood, it was face-to-face. You could see their face. You could hear their voice. You knew who was doing the bullying, and you could deal with it in those days by a quick conflict. We'll call it that.
Right.
Nowadays, it's anonymous. It's broad-based. We have people accusing high school and junior high girls of all kinds of things, and boys, and you can't track it down. So it becomes an insidious thing that just takes kids down.
How many kids have committed suicide because of cyberbullying?
Too many. In fact, you and I have a friend, Mark Papadis, and he sent you an article. And you can, by the way, if you write me at steve@stevebeaman.com or carol@stevebeaman.com, we'll get you a copy of Mark Papadis' article. He runs an organization called
I Am Number 4 Kids.
Yeah.
I Am 4 Kids.
This is a terrific not-for-profit. But this article he wrote had some really scary statistics.
Okay, subject. Over 50% of American kids have a negative self-image. What is a child worth? As much or as little as the child believes. Below are some common responses from over 50% of elementary school kids when asked to complete the statement, I am. I am fat. I am stupid. I am ugly. Do you think mindless TV programs, social media, and violent first-person shooter games our kids are exposed to every day might have something to do with this emotional intelligence in kids being at an all-time low?
I think Mark's hitting something huge here. I mean, we all see it, the change in family structures and family dynamics, the immersion into social media, YouTube videos, all of that component is putting thoughts into these kids' heads. And if you're a parent or a grandparent, again, if you're starting out a family thinking you might have kids, you want to be aware of this because those kids get so much from their games and the videos and the messages that it's beginning to incorporate into their being.
These kids are going to be a little bit different than we are when they get older too.
They're going to have a challenge that we have not had to deal with. And, they're growing up in this world of images. And like we said, you can't live up to an image. You can only live up to who you really are. But when we look at our kids and they see this violence where they think cool is I can kill so many people in a video game, parents have to be really dialed into what that's doing to them deeply.
Well, how desensitized are they? I just find it to be very concerning because I am is such a profound statement. And last week we talked about belief. Well, if you believe you're fat, you're fat.
And they get it off one post.
I believe I'm stupid. No, I might have done a stupid thing. You've got to separate that doer from the deed. And these kids don't have enough. They get the sound bites where it makes them feel fat, stupid, ugly, and it's horrible.
And they get again, somebody will comment on a post. They put up a picture, and somebody will make a comment. Oh,
it's stupid.
Don't you think you need to lose a little, whatever it is?
Gosh.
And it's sinking into their head. So again, I think the purpose of this show is to provide real help for real people. And the purpose of this show today is to highlight the dynamics of social media and media in general, but on what it's doing to our culture, our kids, our society. There was an article in Social Media Examiner talking about ways in which social media is just changing relationships.
Well, and why should we care about this?
But we need to care because our culture is at stake, our family structures, our political structures. And again, this isn't a show about politics, but it's a show about transition. And when you talk about transitions carrying us into the 21st century, I can't think of a bigger one.
Well, I mean, social media is, I know myself, I stopped posting anything that could be construed as inflammatory on social media.
It's not worth the fight.
It's not worth it. It's a waste of time. It's different to be able to look at someone and have a discussion with them versus discussing something on social media where I've been name called. And it's like, you know what? And I don't like to unfriend people.
Right.
But if you're getting ugly, you know what? I don't have time for that negativism.
Isn't it a funny dynamic, though, that we feel guilty when we defriend or unfriend people?
Well, not when someone calls you bad names.
Well, no, then they shouldn't be your friend anyway.
Absolutely.
But these things, I mean, instead of having a few deep relationships now, kids have hundreds, if not thousands, of very surface relationships. That's a new dynamic.
Well, but then let's look at the good side of it, too. I mean, it's a great way to get certain information.
Absolutely.
There's products that I've looked at when I've scrolled through Facebook and a friend has tried this. It's like, oh, let me try that. And it's beneficial and it's helpful. So
SteveBeaman.com is a social media page. It's a web page, but it's part of the social media. And we're up on Facebook at Steve Beaman Show. So we participate in the social media experiment, if you will.
Well, as a small business owner, it could allow you to connect definitely with more people. It makes it, only the negative on that, though, it makes it easy to overestimate the level of intimacy.
Yes, indeed. So this whole issue becomes big. And in fact, last week, you may recall, we had a challenge of the week. And our challenge this week, we're going to challenge all of our listeners to write Carol at stevebeaman.com with their thoughts on how this stuff affects their lives. And we want all of you to do it because last week we had a simple challenge, didn't we?
Had a simple challenge. And did we meet that challenge last week?
If everybody recalls, the challenge was to wake up having a thought of gratefulness in the morning.
The gratitude moment in the morning. Did you do it?
I did.
Awesome.
I absolutely did. I do it all the time because I think, Carol, to your point, you set your mind in the right direction. It's interesting. In the Marine Corps, they make their cadets make their beds every day.
Okay.
And they do it because they want the cadets or the plebes, whatever they're called, to start out with a success first thing in the morning.
Oh, wow.
That's the whole reason they do it, because they can say, oh, I made my bed this morning.
Kind of where the mind goes, the man follows.
And the gratitude thing, if you start off your day with a thought of gratitude and happiness, it tends to carry you through the day.
Well, this is good. I do want to give some solutions, though, for some of this social media here from the article real quick.
Fire away.
Limit the time you spend on social networks. Monitor your own emotions and reactions. Take care not to compare yourself with others. Set goals and guidelines for your business relationships on social media, and maintain balance between your online and offline life.
It's a lot of common sense, isn't it?
It's common sense, which is uncommon.
Well, and it is. And I think a lot of parents get blindsided by it because they didn't grow up with it. They don't really have that familiarity with this stuff. So they're not watching their kids developing their own self-image based on some Pinterest post.
Right. Well, I'm not even on Pinterest.
Well, I was going to say Pinterest is probably a bad example. It's more like, we used to be Facebook and now it's Snapchat.
Snapchat.
Take it. It's all over and it's pervasive. Now, again, as we said on the challenge, if you're right, Carol, we've got a gift that we're going to send to you. And I think we're going to wait until...
Oh, wait. I don't want to talk about the gift yet. It's going to be awesome. We just want you to know that the Steve Beaman Show is here for real help for real people, which is you. And we thank you for listening to our show today.
Absolutely. When we come back, we'll have Carol talking about the letter C, and we are excited about that. It's going to be a terrific segment. We've got a great listener letter that came in that relates directly to last week's show. So we're looking forward to having that when we come around the bottom. Welcome back, everyone, to the bottom of the hour, where we have Carol's Words of Wisdom. And the purpose of this, and you're getting a chance to hear it every week, is that we can give you a letter and an associated word that just gives you a thought for the week. So, Carol, again, I turn the mic over to you with great pleasure.
Well, Steve, let's review real quick. Our first week was attitude. Second week is belief. So we're coming into the letter C, which is commitment. This week's letter is commitment. And I have something here that this is so old. I don't even know how old William Hutchinson Murray is. I believe it's from the turn of the century. But it says, until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative and creation, there's one elementary truth that ignorance of which kills countless ideas and splendid plans, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would never otherwise have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favor all manner unforeseen incidents and meetings and material assistance, which no man could have dreamed would have come his way. Whatever you do or dream, you can do. Begin it with boldness. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. Begin it now and commit.
Carol, I love that. I think, again, it's one of those common sense things, that foundations of better living that we bring to people, and it's so, so very important.
Well, it's real help for real people, and it's a foundational principle. And Steve, have you ever just committed to something? You knew nothing about it, nothing, okay? And all of a sudden, you doors open to you, and people start helping you, and you start getting information on the internet, since we're talking about social media. So anyway, any other thoughts, and what else are we going to talk about now?
Well, I wanted to mention that we're very happy that this week's segment is sponsored by our new sponsor. This last week, I was able to talk to the folks at Cherry Bundy.
Which is also from the letter C, Cherry.
That's right. That's right.
It stays with our
It's a beautiful theme. But the idea is they're going to sponsor this. And what's so interesting is when we talked about it last week, we did indeed get a letter about it.
Yes, and here it is. I took the Cherry Bundy 7-day challenge, and after 6 days, I am sleeping so much better. And that's from Kim H. And Steve, I think we could do a little favor for Kim H. since she went out and took the initiative and the challenge.
We're going to send Kim a 4-pack of Cherry Bundy on us.
Awesome.
And this is really cool because, folks, you know how I feel about it. And I think last week we covered some of the science behind it.
800 milligrams, it's like 800 milligrams of ibuprofen.
And again, this gets to the notion of real help for real people. Last week, we were able to help Kim with a sleep thing. The week before that, it was Nancy, I think, we helped with an issue.
No, it wasn't Nancy. It was Susan D. And Susan said, one more headache behind me. And that was from our sponsor,
John Greeby.
Greeby and Associates, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so it's this idea every week we want somebody to gain something that says I can relate with that and I can help that.
Real help for real people.
That's what it's all about. And again, this week, as we talk about transition in social media, this idea of writing and communicating we love, which is why we've challenged you to write us at carol@stevebeaman.com or steve@stevebeaman.com. And as Carol said, we have a gift coming to all of you who do write.
Oh, but let's not talk about the gift yet. We'll do that. We'll do that a little bit later in the show.
Yeah, we love the letters, and it gives us a chance to interact with you. And we talked last week also about the possibility of Carol and myself doing a daily little broadcast. We haven't committed to that yet, but if you'd like us to do that, we welcome you to write us again at our emails, steve@stevebeaman or carol@stevebeaman.com. Or put it up on Facebook. Just post there. We do post this video up on Facebook after the live broadcast. So if you didn't get a chance to hear the whole program and you'd like to watch us in studio, you can go to Steve Beaman Show on Facebook or stevebeaman.com, and you'll see the live. It's Carol and me will wave to you even, because this video will be up there right after the show. But it's a chance for us to communicate. So we love to get letters from the listeners. We love your guys' feedback. We've gotten some really good stuff. So we urge you, keep it coming.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that Cherry Bundy. You've been taking it for how long?
I've been on it about 3 weeks now.
Okay.
I can just report very factually. I sleep better and I have more energy.
Are we going to throw out a challenge to our listeners this week if they go and get the Cherry Bundy challenge?
I think they should. I think they should walk into Jewel, which is where I buy it. I think it's available all over the place. I'm not real sure everywhere. But they need to take the challenge and just write us and tell us if, in fact, it doesn't help you.
Okay.
I think it will. And again, if you write us, because for the first people who write, we've got a really neat little gift we're going to do.
I'm excited to talk about that.
I am too. So, as we go through and we talk about the issues of your life, and this week being commitment, one of the, major things we want to ask people to commit to is not just starting their week off right with us, but also the idea of committing to learn about things like social media, learn about the effect of all these transitional things going on. Because I'm telling you, folks, it's here to stay. We talked about General Motors releasing driverless taxi cabs in the next couple of years.
Oh, I don't want to talk about that. I do want to talk about, though, what's coming up next. Master your money, the big money master, Steve Beaman. This is going to be good.
Well, it's interesting, folks, as we talk about life in general, I'm sorry to say it. It's kind of curt, it's kind of crass, but money does matter. So when we come back, we are going to be talking about how to select an investment advisor in the Master Your Money segment. This is lesson 20 from the Path to Prosperity audio library.
Which is great. That is amazing.
We're going to talk more about how amazing it is when we come right back here on the Steve Beaman Show.
Now, back to the Steve Beaman Show for insight on your money and the nation's financial future.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Steve Beaman Show, and this, the Master Your Money segment. Again, it's sponsored by our good friend John Greeby of Greeby & Associates. You want to visit John on the web, or come to the stevebeamanshow.com, and you can visit John or some information we put up there on John and our other sponsors. We're pleased, as I said, Cherry Bundy is now stepping up to sponsor us. Clearly, the Society to Advance Financial Education is one of our great sponsors. And this segment uses some of the content that's been produced for the Society to help us go. And this specifically today is lesson 20 from the Path to Prosperity.
The Path to Prosperity. Is there a path to prosperity by choosing the proper advisors?
I think it's part of it. I would argue the path to prosperity is paved with knowledge.
Oh, nice.
But yeah, how to...
Real help for real people.
I talk to people time and time again who feel like their advisor's not treating them right or they're not getting the right deal. So this issue of how do I select an advisor who can help me manage my wealth? I mean, it's one thing to earn it. It's another thing to keep it.
Well, how do I select an advisor? I don't even know the first thing about an advisor.
Well, Carol, you're like most folks, and they think, let's put you in a position that you're retiring, you got a 401k, or you've just gotten an inheritance, or you've sold a house and have some capital. Do you go to your banker, a broker, an attorney, an accountant? How do you select this person? The first thing that I want people to know, and having spent my life in the financial services industry, and, one of the things I talk about is I'm a pilot, so I believe in following your instruments, not your emotion on this stuff. I think people should go out to find an independent registered investment advisor as a starting place.
Why an independent investment advisor?
Because they're not beholden to one of the big product companies. If you go out and you have an advisor that's part of Bank of America Merrill Lynch, not criticizing it at all, but they have an incentive to sell you Merrill Lynch Bank of America product. It's just a natural outgrowth of what they do. Independent advisors can select from anybody's investment products.
Well, how do these people make money?
Well, there's two ways, and this is a critical thing for folks. The first, and this is traditionally how Wall Street has worked, is they get a commission for every transaction. Whether you're buying and selling a stock, an ETF, a mutual fund, or even an insurance policy. Some of these guys flip insurance policies. That commission is how they made a living.
Okay, well, that's fair enough. I mean, you're doing some work on someone's behalf. Is there there's a word when you do work on someone's behalf financially, too?
Well, there's something that's popping up called a fiduciary, and we'll talk about that in a second because this is another key component. But going back to the compensation issue, if we have brokers who are compensated on commissions, the question is, what are they incented to do? Build your wealth or trade your account?
Well, every time I trade, I'm going to get a commission. So I think I'd like to just keep trading.
Right.
Doesn't matter.
The second side of that then are fee-based advisors, and they take a flat percent of your assets. The only way they make more money on you is if your assets grow.
So then there's an incentive for them to have your assets grow because it's win-win. They'll make more money and you make more money.
So we've said, first, go to a private or an independent registered investment advisor. Secondly, find an advisor who works on a fee basis. The third thing is what you just brought up, and that's this fiduciary thing.
Okay, so explain a little bit what that big word fiduciary means.
Let me touch on this from a broad sense. In the brokerage community, historically, there's been something called the prudent man rule, meaning that I could sell you an investment that, generally speaking, met your objectives. If you're a relatively low-risk income investor, you want bonds, I could sell you a mutual fund. Okay, that's prudent. The problem is it leaves open the fact that I can choose which mutual fund I sell you.
Is that like a Bernie Madoff kind of thing?
A little bit, although Bernie was dishonest.
Was
Most
he a
brokers
fiduciary?
Aren't. Well, he actually was, which is why he's in prison.
So he violated his fiduciary responsibility. He deserves to be in
and that's
prison.
the second side. If we take out of the prudent man rule into the fiduciary standard, the fiduciary advisors are required under law to put your interest ahead of theirs. So when it comes down to selecting an investment for you, for example, they cannot by law go to the highest cost one. In fact, they have to go to the lowest cost one.
Oh.
Because otherwise they're breaching their fiduciary responsibility. Under a fiduciary standard, you cannot do things different for your client than you would do for yourself.
Okay.
Let me give you a tangible example. Back in the mortgage meltdown, Goldman Sachs was out selling mortgage-backed securities all around the world. In their proprietary in-house accounts, they were selling short.
Okay, wait a minute. Mortgage-backed securities is, real quick, 30 seconds on that.
All of the securities that we're using are mortgages packaged and bundled together.
The bundled mortgages.
So on one hand, they're selling them to people.
What do you mean they're selling them short?
They're borrowing money to sell it, assuming the price will go down.
That's why the whole bubble went.
It's a big part of it. That was not fiduciary. They put their own interest ahead of everyone else, but it was prudent. They were allowed to do it. So this idea, as you're going out to select an advisor, you want an independent registered investment advisor, fee-based, and one who acts as a fiduciary on your money.
Okay.
3 key things.
Real help for real people. Again, review. Independent, fee-based, and fiduciary.
That's exactly right. And real quick, the Department of Labor just passed some really interesting regulations related to what's called ERISA, or retirement funds. People who have 401ks, IRAs, and all that. Under the new rules and regulations, you must be a fiduciary in order to give advice on any of those retirement funds.
Do I have to be a millionaire to get into any of these advisors real quick?
No, not at all. You can get, most advisors will be down in the $500,000 range, but there are some. And if you have less than that and you're interested in learning more, write me at steve@stevebeaman.com, because I've got friends who are fiduciary advisors who will bring people in for $5,000.
Oh, that's very good. That's a very good entry. Well, Steve, this is great. I love it. I love it. Very, very, very good information. Real help.
For real people.
Yeah.
When we come back, we're going to close it all up, but we're thankful that you're with us here on the Steve Beaman Show.
We've got a great freebie coming. Welcome back to the Steve Beaman Show. This is Carol Parisi, Steve's co-host on this great show on this great Sunday evening. Be sure to catch us here every Sunday at 8 p.m. Or you could go to stevebeaman.com and you could get our show replayed. Right, Steve?
Absolutely. Yeah, we put the video up all week, so you can come in. We'll wave again. But you can see our video up on the stevebeaman.com site or Facebook all week long.
Well, hey, Steve, let's do a real quick recap. Facebook, free speech.
Yep, we were talking all day about social transition and social transformation. And so we started out with this issue of Facebook, a private company, and free speech and how important that is.
Well, I think it's very important, and they have a responsibility to the listeners because with much responsibility comes,
great power comes great responsibility.
Power and responsibility.
Spider-Man 101. But then we went into our new, what we call Master Your Mind segment, where we talked about bullying.
Well, cyberbullying. I would much rather have a kid duke it out in the playground because I think there's just physical damage. I mean, I don't promote violence. Believe me, I don't. I don't promote violence. But sometimes when you just get something slapped, it's over. You're bruised and you get stronger by it.
This anonymous cyberbullying stuff, folks, you got to watch out for it. And if your kids are subjected to it, it's real. But then we talked also about our special challenge of the week.
Well, before the special challenge, I did want to also that I am for kids. Yep. These kids are thinking, I am fat, I am stupid, I am ugly. We need to do better. On stevebeaman.com, we can talk a little bit about that for I am for kids.
Absolutely. We'll put something up.
And Master Your Mind, relationship dynamics.
Yep, we talked about this whole change in our society. And again, coming in from the kids' effect to adults and how it's changing the nature of relationships, all part of understanding the world around us, putting it into a perspective that we can use to help us live better and really more fulfilled lives.
Real help for real people. Limit your time on the internet. Now let's talk about commitment. The letter C, foundational. Till once you're committed to doing something, you're not going to do it the best way possible. When you commit to something, doors open for you that you could never imagine. And the other C word is Cherry Bundy.
That's right, because we have that challenge for people who write carol@stevebeaman.com. What do they get?
Okay, the first five people that write me, carol@stevebeaman.com, you're going to get a free 4-pack of Cherry Bundy. First 5 people, this is limited offer, and you can take the 7-day challenge. So what challenge does the Master of Money have for us this week, Mr.
Absolutely. We
Beaman?
were thinking as we go to the Master Your Money, if you go to stevebeaman.com, we are offering relationship with the society, the first lesson of the Path to Prosperity as a free download. So you can go right to stevebeaman.com. It's right there at the bottom, and you can get the first disc for free.
Anybody. That's an unlimited offer.
100 million people, we hope, would do that.
Okay, I'd like to set out a challenge. Let's get 100 million people to go ahead and go to stevebeaman.com, download the Master of Money, and I think that would be great.
That would give us a lot more to talk about. Next week when we come back, by the way, we've got a brand new Master Your Money, and we're going to have a show theme that's a little bit deeper in the woods. We're going to be talking about drugs. It's such a huge issue in our country today, and it's affecting kids all over the place.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of drugs that are really, they're killing our children, Steve. Killing our children, killing families, breaking hearts all over the place.
It's just huge. It has economic impact on our country. It has social impact on our country. So we're going to talk about it. It's going to be tough, but we're going to try to come up with some real help for real people.
Yep.
As we go through, I want to say a quick thanks to our sponsors, the Society to Advance Financial Education, to John Grebe of Grebe & Associates, and our brand new sponsor, Cherry Bundy. We're glad to have them on board. I also want to spend a second and thank our producer, Mr. Jim Thompson, who does such a fabulous job for us, and our great friend here, Paula Peterson, who helps us out.
Thank you, Steve and Paula. And remember, only five, carol@stevebeaman.com for you. Free Cherry Bundy.
Every week we look at how to sign off, so I'm just going to say this, and if you watch us at stevebeaman.com, you'll see it. But from my heart to your heart, we want to thank you for joining us here on the Steve Beaman Show, and we look forward to joining you next week at 8 o'clock.